Welcome to Trust Talks and Digital Dives, where we delve into the world of trust in the digital age. Trust Talks and Digital Dives is produced by DIACC, a nonprofit organization that fosters secure and privacy-enhancing access to digital services in Canada and globally. Whether you're navigating the complexities of data privacy, pondering the impact of AI on trust, or curious about how technology shapes our relationships, you're in the right place. I'm Joni Brennan, president of the DIACC, and I'll be your host. This episode discusses the importance of signaling trust by earning a Trustmark through DIACC's PCTF certification program. Today's guests are Rakesh Raghupathi, Director of Product Strategy and Partnerships at ATB Ventures, Ray Kimble, founder and CEO of KUMA and chairman of the board of the KUMA Foundation, and Ruth Puente, Trustmark Verification and Program Manager at DIACC. Let's dive in to digital trust with Rakesh, Ray, and Ruth. And welcome to Trust Talks and Digital Dives. Today we have a very special episode, which is focused on signaling digital trust through PCTF certification. It's a fantastic opportunity to talk about the value of this program and the value of the leaders who are going through to achieve their certification. So I have a fantastic set of guests for our discussion today, and they'll introduce themselves as we get started here. So really, we're going to talk about what the experience of certification was like, what the value, lessons learned along the way, and share some advice for the audience, for the listeners, for how they can get involved or learn more. So with that, I'm Joni Brennan, president of the DIACC, and it's a real pleasure and honor to moderate this discussion today. So for our guests, I'd like for you to please introduce yourselves for our listeners and why this discussion is important for you today. So let's start with you, Rakesh. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Joni, for having me here. My name is Rakesh Raghupathi, and I am the Director of Products for Strategy and Partnerships within ATB Ventures, which is the innovation arm of ATB Financial. I primarily govern our portfolio's vision towards business goal and strategic partnerships. And one of our portfolio is Oliu, a digital trust and identity verification platform that enables identity verification, authentication, and reusable digital identity management. And I'm really excited to be part of this conversation with our recent certification with DIACC.
Thanks, Rakesh. Okay, let's head over to you, Ray. Ray, would you introduce yourself for the listeners?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Ray Kimble, CEO and founder of KUMA. First of all, thank you, DIACC, for having me on, and Joni and Ruth. Appreciate it. I'm excited to talk through just the certification process at a high level and about what ATB Ventures has been through. And KUMA is for folks that may not know, a cybersecurity company. This is our 10th year in operations, our 10-year anniversary. We focus a lot on security, privacy, and identity. And so we have a large audit practice that's where all of our identity certification work happens. We also have a lot of experience in other certification areas in terms of PCI DSS, HIPAA, high trust in healthcare, SOC 2 Type 2, you kind of name it. We either do readiness or actual certification around that, including the identity certifications, which we'll talk about today. So nice to meet you.
Awesome. Thank you, Ray. That's great. And handing over to you, Ruth, would you please introduce yourself? Thank you.
Thank you, Johnny. This is Ruth Puente. I lead the DIACC certification program. I've been in the identity space for more than 10 years, helping to develop and prepare frameworks and certification programs in the US, UK, Europe, and Canada. And I'm delighted to be here and to discuss with Ray, that I work with him for many years in other jurisdictions as well, and also thrilled to be part of the journey and have our first certified provider, Oliu.
Great. With that round of introductions, let's get into the conversation. So my first question is going to be for you, Rakesh, what motivated ATB Oliu to pursue DIACC PCTF certification, and how has the process of that certification impacted your digital trust and identity approach inside of your organization, as well as for your customers and your partners?
Thank you so much for the question, Johnny. And yeah, Oliu, it's a short form for only you. We have been dedicating our development around this portfolio or the platform in providing the digital trust and identity solution that meets the highest standard of quality and integrity. With that goal in mind, pretty much like 3 years back when we started working on this, we were partnering with DIACC, and we got access to the Pan-Canadian Trust Framework, and we use that as a guideline to develop the solution along with our open standards, the technical open standards. But for us, when the program was announced, the certification program, we realized there is no better way for us to demonstrate this commitment that we are providing a trustworthy and a reliable digital identity verification service than to obtain the PCTF certification. And now, after being certified as the first DIACC PCTF certified service provider, our customers and also partners are rest assured that they have chosen a platform that meets the best standards of quality and integrity while putting privacy first. Now, the certification also serves a way to energize our own team as we are striving to advance secure and interoperable digital trust within the Canadian economy now and also for the future. That's our say.
That makes a ton of sense. And it's really interesting to hear what your experience has been, how that's demonstrated outward, and also fascinating on how it energized the team inward as well. So I love the different directions of the value and the benefit from what you experienced. Thanks for sharing, Rakesh. So I'll go over now to you, Ray, and I'll ask about your side of experience as KUMA. What was your experience in auditing against the PCTF privacy criteria? And how did you see your experience in auditing against PCTF criteria in relation to other certifications that you're doing in other jurisdictions?
Yeah, it's a great question. And Rakesh, I love that point that you just made, that it energized not only your external customers, but your internal employees. That's pretty great to hear. It makes our job kind of worthwhile too. And the auditor never gets enough credit. And so it's not the most sexy of jobs. But I think auditing the privacy component and how it relates to some of the others. So the audit itself is in line with other kind of audit efforts. When an organization goes through, you have to provide, you look at the requirements, you provide your controls, and you show your evidence of those controls in place and how you manage against those evidences. So at the end of the day, what we're looking at and working with is, we're looking at a lot of policies, procedures. We're doing interviews. We're testing the system. We go in and we look at, does the organization have other certifications or reports, third-party reports that were done. And so we're looking at a lot of different kind of controls, if you will, whether it's the verified person or whether it's the privacy component or the other components that DIACC has in place today. And it's interesting when you think about this, the identity certifications, is security certifications and to some extent privacy certifications. When you think about, if it's ISO or if it's GDPR or HIPAA has a privacy component, you kind of, or CCPA, here in the U.S., you kind of, there's not a lot, in terms of very specific privacy requirements and controls. And so one, it was a great effort and a great undertaking, by DIACC to put the certification scheme together for a privacy component. And when you look at, the certifications around identity in the United States, whether it's NIST, 800-63-3, which is their special publication, soon to be 63-4, another release. And you look at the UK program around identity. What's neat about what DIACC has done is they've created componentized service criteria that can be audited. So it really allows for flexibility from a service provider's perspective to understand how they fit into the identity ecosystem. And that is unique, and I think it's a welcome approach. And I think you're starting to see some of the other national efforts kind of become a little bit more flexible, if you will, understanding that there's different ways that identity services and components can be looked at and used within the identity ecosystem. So DIACC was really kind of leading the effort in that and came up with a very specific privacy component. And so we were lucky enough to assess against that and work with the ATB Ventures team. And it went, there, of course, being the first, there's always, hiccups and bumps and along the way, but at the end of the day, everybody felt very satisfied with the work done and had the level of trust, including the review board within DIACC, that the ATB Ventures products and services met the privacy component. And so we're very excited to successfully complete that.
Fascinating to hear what your experience was at auditing against the criteria, Ray, and what that looks like in the context of other programs that you've worked with around the world. And I would also say recognizing that for the organizations that are first to take on a new opportunity, certainly there are headwinds at being at the front of the line. And then at the same time, there are benefits for being first mover and leadership and setting the pathway for what what trust looks like in that industry and verifiable trust looks like in that space. So huge kudos and recognition for both Oliu and KUMA being the first to go through this program, and now others are in the lineup. So yeah, huge kudos there. So, sticking on we've heard a bit of the experience of Oliu and going through the certification process. We've heard from KUMA in certifying against the criteria. So now I want to move over to you, Ruth, and I want to ask you, for the listeners, to share a bit about what is underlying that experience, the specific elements of the certification program, and how the program has positioned, the Voila Verified PCTF certification program has been positioned to contribute to digital trust and assurance interoperability in our space. Thanks, Ruth.
It's very interesting to see in live all these documented policies and see a specific example like this. I think that's great to see after the efforts of creating the different pieces to make sure that we have a strong and also standardized process for the program. So the DIACC certification program is available for those vendors that wants to become trusted services and demonstrate conformity to the Pan-Canadian Trust Framework. We have designed the program around ISO standards such as 17065, 17021, among others. And also, in continuation to what Ray was commenting, we also took some lessons learned from other jurisdictions as well. Always try to be aligned with the trends and our colleagues from other frameworks that are based in other jurisdictions. And so the core elements of that process include the application phase, where the applicant provides specific documentation about the organization, the service that is in the scope of the evaluation. And there are a lot of templates in terms of related to the conformance criteria, so the vendor can self-attest itself against that requirement. And so that's an interesting exercise, so to get to know better the requirements, but also see how far they are in terms of complying to that specific requirement or not, and then specifying the available evidence they have for the audit. And so then that's reviewed, and once everything is complete and we have enough information to determine the scope of the certification, then the audit starts, and Ray already provided the details about that, but it's basically a point-in-time audit, doing documentation review and on-site visits. And once that audit is finalized, our auditor provides the audit report with all the findings and results. And then an independent committee conducts a quality review of that findings, and then DIACC, with all that information and outputs, makes the decision on granting the certification and therefore issuing a Trustmark. And so we, through this third-party evaluation and conformity assessment, what we try to achieve is add value to the Canadian community by enhancing the confidence in the services, because now after this evaluation, they are trusted services, and our processes are standardized, so they do not cut corners in terms of the evaluation. And in relation to the Trustmark, is interesting because once that Trustmark is published on the trusted list, and then the market is aware of this certification, it creates a very positive signal to the market and the different relying parties, because that service means that it's secure and reliable, and therefore all the opportunities start to come up for that vendor, and also creates more consistency in the marketing, in the market, and also in the ecosystem. And in relation to the interoperability, well, DIACC is very committed to try to align the different policies with the other jurisdictions, helping to bring trust and also a lot of consistency to that. So to make the life of the service providers easier, that when they come to our jurisdiction, they don't find big deltas of what they found, for example, in the US NIF 863 or the UK framework. And one of the best things of the program is that it's standardized, and so the different approaches on evaluation, on the audit, and the results, and the Trustmark, that is following specific requirements of ISO standards, and so that makes the alignment with the other jurisdictions that have certification as well more easier, and also that aligns a lot our different approaches and help advance the global interoperability with that as well.
Yeah, thank you for sharing those details, Ruth. When you hear the experience of the service getting audited, Oliu, when you hear the experience of the auditor forming the audit, KUMA, and then when you hear the elements of design that were put into the program, it really, for me, makes clear the fact that something as simple as an image, a Trustmark, the work underneath that's gone into putting that mark into place, designing the program, and it's something that's really built on tested procedures and processes that have developed over time within bodies like ISO and within standards ecosystem as well. So a lot of work underneath for something that looks so simple as a Trustmark to deliver that signal of confidence into the ecosystem. So that's super impressive to hear. And Ruth, in your role as the lead, it must be exciting to see the program, the first certification, go forward. With that, I want to go back to Rakesh and let's have a fun part of the conversation. Tell us, has achieving the Trustmark, how has that enhanced your organization, and particularly the reputation for competition and leadership, and an advantage regarding your signaling of digital trust and identity verification into the ecosystem? Tell us about what that's been like.
Sure, Johnny. Thank you. Now, ATB Ventures is part of ATB Financial, the 8th largest bank of Canada, the largest business bank. A bank being always a risk-averse institution, ATB Financial has been an outlier on that, with innovation as first. We always look forward for what happens in the next digital future. With that, ATB Ventures, when we started 4 years back, it took us 1 year to nail down, this is where we have to work on as our first portfolio, which is our digital identity. And we had a strategic partnership with DIACC to rely on DIACC's input on these kind of guidelines and how the framework itself. So we did our work, we built the system, but we have been always scratching our head on Should we go with ISO? Should we go with SOC 2? And this is the time now we came across the program announcement and we said, we need to be the first. And today, after being certified, when I say we, ATB Ventures and ATB Financial, we are enormously proud to be the first Kenyan organization or the first organization from DIACC to obtain this PCTF certification. Now, earning this Trustmark is definitely a huge differentiator for us in the marketplace. At least since the announcement that we did last month, we see a lot of traction from our existing prospects that we are working with and our existing customers. Their trust on us, on our services has increased, and it's opening up a lot of new dialogues. Now they are looking into not just verification services. What else this ecosystem can do? This is what we have been waiting for. With that, I can say that we have set the bar tremendously high. When I say we, ATB Ventures, KUMA, DIACC, with this certification getting out, we have set the bar really high for digital identity solutions in Canada, while showcasing ATB Ventures, our commitment to security, interoperability, alignment with industry, international industry standards, and more important, user privacy. And to me personally, I look at the certification stamp on my service as a signal of our desire and ability to be the thought leader during this evolution of Kenyan digital trust as we work to create a secure and interoperable digital first future in Canada. Now, we know it's only the beginning for us. We are really excited to continue our commitment to the growth of this ecosystem. And with that, we do have already laid out plans on obtaining further PCTF component certifications. Like we heard from Ray a few minutes back, there are other certain components more relevant to verified person, infrastructure, the digital wallet itself. So we are lining up our plans on working again with KUMA and DIACC to get certified against those specific components, which is in direct alignment with our services.
No, that's awesome to hear, and it's amazing to hear how the profile of what you've experienced in terms of the reputation for trust has raised, how it's helped conversations that you already have in motion, and how it's opened doors for new conversations. It reminds me of a conversation you and I were having about jobs to get done. And since then, I've always said trust jobs to get done, and now your partners and your collaborators and clients seeing that how these patterns for trust can play into other ecosystems and other types of use cases. So I do think that's a great example of where and how capabilities and the patterns underneath them extend into other places. And so there's a lot of room for growth here. And it's great to hear, that your plans for your next steps on certification. It's really commend you and the whole team. Now let's hear about, turning back over to you, Ray, based on, your role as the auditor within this particular certification. What advice do you have for other organizations that would be seeking certification that are considering it right now?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to just kind of touch back on, Joni, when you talked about the simplicity of the Trustmark and all the detail and the trust that sits behind it, and the effort that DIACC did around ensuring that the interoperability of the requirements that were written took into consideration, one, based on ISO standards, and then two, other initiatives that are out there. And so it was a really well thought out approach from DIACC in the beginning, and it also helps the service provider at the end of the day, because when we come in and we do an audit, a lot of times people aren't familiar with this identity space as being audited. They're used to, they're going through an ISO certificate, ISO or SOC, from a security standpoint. Sometimes some of the privacy ones, and so a lot of times when we come in, it's all about looking at your evidence, your policies, and your procedures, and your documentation. And so the more that organizations like yours and like DIACC has done, when you set up that interoperable kind of pathway and make it easier for these organizations to also be trusted in other jurisdictions, it allows them to take this kind of one time for many approach. And when a service provider goes through these audits, that first time it's more work than the second time. You're developing some of this, documentation. There's unique ways in which the assessment body wants to see certain things. And that's the case in any kind of certification, really. And so I think some of the critical points around, just making sure your documentation is in place after reading through the requirements, even though it sounds kind of, simple and kind of base, I need to emphasize it and hit it over and over. A lot of times organizations will just jump in, and that's one way to do it. But make sure that you're reading through the requirements and you're understanding what evidence you have today that can specifically speak to each one of those requirements. And so I think one is just from a readiness standpoint is being able to be ready for the audit, making sure that you have documentation in place. And then if not, you're reaching out and you're talking to DIACC, and you're trying to understand what could meet, what this requirement may mean, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's probably the key area. I think the second point I would make is around making sure that, kind of three, but making sure that you have a project manager or somebody dedicated to seeing this through. And a lot of times, these audits can kind of slide to the right, and it's because they're newer. And the more that you have somebody on your side, on the service provider side, that manages this as not a full-time job, but a part-time job, and it's a priority, and they're kind of quarterbacking this from their side. It makes things a lot smoother for us because these audits they're all encompassing, and they need to be, because you're talking about trusted services. And so you're going to hit in, the financial area of a business. You're going to hit in the technical area of a business, the human resources side of the business. So you're going to hit in all these different components, and all of that, and security and privacy, obviously. But sometimes organizations have one person dedicated to each of those streams, if you will, those business units. So having somebody dedicated to the ongoing management of getting through the audit is important. Those are probably the highlights that I would kind of call out for a service provider going through it.
Awesome. Did I miss a third? So one was do your homework. So have your homework in hand, your readiness. Yeah. Two was have a PM to stick handle that it moves forward. Was there a third piece, or was there two?
I think those are probably the two most pressing.
Those are big ones.
They are big ones, and they oftentimes get overlooked. So I think those are the two takeaways I would kind of highlight.
Love it. And you also started with, thanks for sharing your feedback on how the program was developed and what went into that. So as we turn over, I would also recognize that the certification program has been built on best practices, what we've learned from ISO, what's been learned from other jurisdictions around the world. And everything's a team effort, but having a leader on the team like Ruth on our team really guide the establishment of this program. We've been, very, very lucky to have her in the team and with her leadership setting the path for how this program has gone forward. So that's a mark of the awesome experience and leadership of Ruth. So Ruth, I'll turn over to you and ask you, what advice do you have, based on the experience through this certification for other organizations that are considering getting their DIACC PCTF Trustmark?
Thank you, Jenny. Well, Ray has gave great remarks on that, and I think that's very valuable advice on very concrete considerations for the service providers. And, that's related with one of the key questions that service providers at the beginning during the engagement meetings ask is, what's the time frame for that? And then I always try to explain them that's one of the key factors that impacts on the whole process is that how well prepared they are. And usually the service providers believes that, that's happening in all the jurisdictions I've been in. Usually the service provider believes, oh yes, I comply with that because they see the requirement and in practice they have, but the issue is that sometimes that is not documented. And that's, of course, it has impacts on them during the audit as Ray said. So that's why it's it's critical to have the documented policies and also, of course, the policies in place. And that will mitigate the time frame of the process, but also to ensure that the results are successful as well. So otherwise, the audit process will have delays because you don't have evidence. So and also on that point, I think that's is essential, the third party validation, because if we only stay with the self-attestation of the provider saying, "Oh yes, I comply with this," then of course that's the risk is all for the customer. But then that's why it's important that an independent third party validates what the service provider is saying, that yes, I comply with it. But then, do you have evidence? Can we inspect your system? Can we observe your processes? And so that's the core aspect of trust, basically. So it's not enough with self-assessment because that's too risky for the customer. And so adding the different layers of the third-party evaluation with the audit, the application, the committee review, and having a certification body such as DIACC providing you the liability and providing you the confidence on that will mitigate all this risk and provide the trust that the ecosystem needs.
Kind of like the journey is the point, going through the process is the point, because through that process and through being prepared and going through the process, you improve and have that verification, and it's all about evidence, like you said, like evidence is the background. There was a saying, trust but verify. And I think more and more, especially moving into AI and AGI, digital economy and society, more and more it's going to be trust at your own risk, or verify then trust. Trust what is verified, because that verification, is becoming so much more important as we're getting lower cost of attacks and things like AI and AGI really fueling both benefits and risks in digital ecosystem. Fantastic. Appreciate everybody's comments today, and go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, Joni, I just wanted to jump in too. One of the things that I don't think maybe we touched on and we glossed over, the year two, and the ongoing nature of these audits.
Yeah.
It's not just the trust in the moment, show us documentation in the get-go, but then
point in time versus
right.
Over time.
12 months from now, we come back and we're looking at not only do you have the evidence, but did you manage to that evidence over the past 12 months? And that's critical. That's so important to maintain that level of trust and elevate the level of trust, not only from the Trustmark perspective, but also internally with your business operations. So it's an important piece to the DIACC cert.
Yeah, it's a journey over time, exactly. And the point in time it's just that. It's the point in time. So it's the overtime process that really matters as well. So, as we close, I wanted to ask, and maybe since you had the last comment, I'll start with you, Ray. How can people get in touch with you who'd like to learn more about KUMA? LinkedIn or an email? Yeah.
All the natural spots. We have the website is www.kuma.pro, and but we're also on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and those sites, as much as I am not great at them.
All the places.
The website
Awesome.
is the best spot.
Awesome. Wonderful. Rakesh, how can people get in touch with you for, your comments or for Oliu?
Definitely, we are all trying to work towards one ecosystem. So we really want to share the experience and our next steps around the certification with anyone who is interested. You can find me in LinkedIn, Rakesh Raghupathi. Just go to ATB Ventures, and you'll find a lot of social posts with me also included there. That's one way to reach out to us.
Perfect. And Ruth, people who want to get in touch with you and to learn more, what's the best way?
Voila at DIACC.ca.
Voila. Perfect. Voila at DIACC.ca to learn more about the certification experience. So thank you so much for joining for this conversation today and sharing your experiences and your leadership with others who are interested in, learning more about the value and what the experience is like. Folks should really get in touch with this amazing group if you'd like to learn more. And for the audience as well, if you have follow-up questions, let us know, and we're happy to take them into future episodes or future discussions. And so thank you once again for joining today and for your leadership in the digital trust and identity space. Thank you all.
Thanks, Johnny.
That's a wrap for today's episode of Trust Talks and Digital Dives. Your support means the world to us. If you found today's conversation insightful, subscribe so you'll never miss an episode. Help us spread the word by sharing Trust Talks and Digital Dives in your networks. So until next time, keep exploring and keep delving into the world of digital trust.